Welcome back, everybody. Inside the Gamecocks, the show, our 200th episode, by the way. Congrats to us. Pat ourselves on the back for that. But no, first hour of the show brought to you by Cindy Searfoss and the Coldwell Banker Kane Realty team here in the upstate. 864-414-5271 is how to get in touch with Cindy for all your upstate residential real estate needs. And of course, we've got John Whittle, since it's Monday, to kind of talk us through some of the emotions that we're feeling about this baseball season. I read your piece on the Big Spur this morning, John. If y'all haven't seen it, it is VIP. Y'all sign up for the Big Spur. Read it. Excellent article. But you and I are of a like mind on a couple of these things, especially about high school recruiting and the portal not necessarily being as consistent as it could possibly be moving forward, John. But happy to have you. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. Appreciate you guys having me and honored to be part of show 200.
Hey, before we get into all that stuff, what was the atmosphere like in the swamp?
You're gonna start out with that, huh? Yeah.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is because I don't think folks are gonna like my answer.
It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was electric. I thought it was awesome. I was really impressed with the Florida fans this week, and I've always given Florida baseball fans a hard time, and that's one of the many reasons I've really disliked going to Gainesville for baseball. But they were awesome. 2.5 hour rain delays. Everybody stuck it out. There was hardly an empty seat out there. They were into the game the whole time. I mean, it was a great atmosphere, and kudos to them for being so good that weekend.
I agree with you. I was surprised by it. I do think a lot of that had to do, though, John, with the Gamecocks coming to town. SEC East rival swept them in the regular season. I think that had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think that could certainly be part of it. They've got a nice new ballpark down there. They've got which I think is certainly helpful, and they were good. What can I say? They were good.
I really like the guy on TV giving the suck it sign to our players. That was nice and classy.
That was.
They were those baseball. Gator baseball fans were the epitome of class.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. They just buy jeans and use scissors. That's what they do down there. All right, John. Describe the season in your eyes.
I mean, 10,000-foot view. I mean, you got to be happy with it, right? Like, one of the top teams in the country for most of the year. A little lull at the end of the season, probably more than a little lull. That's probably using kids' gloves. It was a really poor month there for a while. But you got healthy at the right time and looked great in the regional. And you were just beaten by a better team in the super regional. And I don't think anybody would have come into this season thinking that South Carolina could match Florida in talent toe to toe, and they couldn't. It was a better season than I thought it would probably be going into the year, and Florida's just a better, more talented team.
Yeah, I said it last week. There's no secret to this weekend. The best team's going to win it, and I think the best team did win it. I thought. Going back to Friday night, John, I mean, two things stood out, too. Let's start with the baseball side. Messina's at bat was huge. I was sitting with Blake Cooper, and we both thought when they walked Petrie, we thought, this is the moment that Cole Messina busts this thing open. And it looked like a two-seamer, kind of came in on him, and he grounded into that double play. I thought that was a huge moment. And then, obviously, the call on Wimmer, they blew it. Those will go against you sometimes, but it's a bad moment for a call like that to go against you.
Yeah, for sure. And, Cole had such a great year, and he had a really tough weekend down in Florida. And I know he feels awful about it, but, that's just part of baseball. Sometimes you have a bad weekend. Sometimes it comes at the worst moments, and you got to have other guys pick you up. And, it was really a tough weekend for him, but I'm with you. Like I thought in that moment that was going to be a big moment for South Carolina, and it ended up being a big moment for Florida. And the Wimmer thing was just disappointing all the way around. It just wasn't good umpiring. Things weren't applied properly. Things were handled improperly in terms of what you're supposed to do with those calls, and it just it was disappointing. They had every opportunity to correct it and didn't.
Well, we could spend all day talking about that call clearly, but this conversation is for this team. They've earned it. They're back in the 40-plus win column. They got to the Super Regionals once again, John, and we'll move ourselves into what's important about the postseason or the off season here in just a little bit. But overall, I when you look back at how they started, how they finished, what they went through to get here, all of the injuries, I actually kind of find it marvelous that they made it to the Super Regional, because we've seen this story happen a couple of times. One year, you had a ton of offensive injuries. Another year, you had a ton of pitching injuries. This year, you had a bunch of both. And not only did they keep it together, but they were talented enough to kind of pull it out in the end and at least give themselves a chance. And with all that said, they've got for the first time in, I don't know, John, tell me what, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe the strongest foundation I've seen moving forward.
Yeah, this is, to me, the most talented team that they've got coming back since Kingston took over. Chad Holbrook left them with a really good team back in for that 2018 season. There wasn't much behind it, and that was a big reason why 2019 was such a disaster. But there was a good team left in 2018. This is the best team left that there's been since then. You got a couple of first team All SEC guys. You've got some pitchers who have been really good and can be really good and can be better. Eli Jones, Roman Kimball, Matthew Becker, like there's room for those guys to be better. And I think they will be. And you got another 19 home run guy in Gavin Casas. Like there's a really solid foundation. There are holes. There are holes that have to be filled, and there's some guys who have to step up and be better, obviously, next year. But, yeah, it's a really good foundation to build on for next season.
A guy that hasn't been talked about because he hadn't played because of injuries is Jacob Compton. Where do you think he's going to end up fitting in this ordeal?
See, that is hard because you've got Gavin Casas who can play first base or DH, and he's going to be in there at one of those two spots. You've got Jacob Compton who can play first base or DH. You've got Carson Hornig who can probably play first base or DH. I don't think he can play outfield. Maybe he can. Maybe he can get out there. I mean, that's three guys right there who are really position limited. With Compton, he's a left-handed power bat, and we'll see how he makes the adjustment from Memphis to SEC play, and coming off of a back injury that sidelined him for the year. He's still not swinging a bat. Once he was kind of ruled out for the year, like it was more about being sure you're getting 100% healthy. So, he's not swinging a bat, at least as far as I know, over in the last couple of weeks. And so you got to see how he comes back and progresses. But, he profiles as a first base DH type who can hit for some power.
Of those three, who's the best first baseman in your opinion when healthy?
Carson Hornig would be in time if you gave him enough time over there. But Casas is probably your most consistent guy, especially right now. He's not great over there defensively, but he's made a few plays. He's okay. He's okay with picking balls out of the dirt. He played a little bit better defensively over the kind of late in the season, but he's certainly no Gold Glover, but he's a little bit better than those guys right now.
It's what the off season's for, John. Braswell has moved on. This has been kind of coming, is my understanding of this. Fill us in.
Yeah, I would say probably. It's been kind of back and forth at times. There was about a month ago, he told some folks within the program that he was staying here this off season and getting to work in the weight room to be able to improve his strength so he can improve his offensive numbers. Last year he didn't stay with the team. The guys who weren't playing summer ball for the most part, stayed here and we're in the weight room with Billy Anderson. That was well documented. It was mainly pitchers, but there were a few position players in there. Braswell elected to go home and do his work on his own and with his people, which is fine. And but this year he was planning on being around, and that's changed a little bit over the last couple of weeks. And the thought process has changed some, and he's decided to go into the portal and he provided some big moments for South Carolina this season. Without him, they may not win that Georgia game. They may not win that Missouri game. And if you don't win those two games, you're not hosting a regional.
That's
so,
right.
and things definitely change. So I think folks should certainly wish Michael Braswell the best on his way out.
I agree. 100%. 100%.
So what's going to happen at shortstop?
It's a good question, and we don't know yet.
Do you think they'll play a shortstop next year? Or just...
I do think they'll have one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As much as they shift, maybe not.
Wanted to calm some people down. That's all.
No, but if you look on the current team, like Will Tippett is the guy, and I really like Will Tippett. I think he's a good player. I think he can play shortstop. If Braylon Wimmer had gotten hurt and they had a game in the fall, Will Tippett would have been the starter. Michael Braswell came on a little bit, and I was asked about that on the Big Spur today. Why did Michael Braswell go into the lineup when Will McGillis came out? Why didn't he go? But Braswell started to turn it on, and we reported that before it happened. Kind of after the Clemson series, he started kind of re-engaging, for lack of a better word, and just kind of past Tippett. But I think he's good. I think he's got a real chance. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get better offensively. He's got to show more, in my opinion, from a arm strength at shortstop position. That looked like it could be a question mark, but he's got it in there. He did some pitching in high school, was 92, 93 miles an hour, topped out at. So he's got arm strength in there. It's just a matter of showing a little bit. So I think he can be there. That being said, they're gonna try to recruit another portal guy who can play shortstop as well and play on the middle infield. They've been talking to some guys. They've missed on the guy who committed to Wake Forest the other day, Seaver King. So they're on the right guys if Wake Forest is getting them committed. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But I Will Tippett, Lee Ellis coming in the recruiting class is a defensive option there. He's a little light with the bat right now too, but I think you'll see somebody in the portal to come in and compete with Tip.
John, real quick on the middle infield. My understanding of this, you overrule me, but this was this scouting report I received. The second baseman from VMI, he's coming to hit. Is that a fair statement?
Very fair.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Yeah,
and the young man,
he's had shoulder problems. He's had some labrum problems. So, he played shortstop for VMI this past year. 19 errors. Just probably not a whole lot of arm strength in there. If he's playing on the field, it's at second base. Or there's been an emergency. So, but yeah.
Oh God,
he's been brought in as a bat.
Oh no. The young man from North Florida, a potential leadoff guy. I guess you could say to this day he's probably going to have the edge on that position, but there's a long way to go before that's figured out. And then any news on the kid from Greensboro?
Last I heard, South Carolina was in pretty good spot with Kennedy Jones, the UNC Greensboro transfer. I know Wake Forest is in on him as well, and several. I mean, really anywhere he wants to go. Yeah, he's got some ties here, but he's gonna be tough to get.
I've heard similar. John, I think that it's important when you look at what's returning, because we've said that the foundation is there on the offensive side. Let's just start with the offense. And clearly the first two names that are going to come up every time you have this conversation are Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina, and they should. Those two guys combined for about 40 home runs and 140 RBI and probably a combined 350 something batting average. Elite 3-4 hitters in the SEC. You mentioned Casas. You mentioned Talmadge LeCroy. We'll see what Compton brings to the table if he's healthy. I certainly like him. And there's a bunch of other stuff in there we've kind of gone over, but you don't want to have that in a vacuum. It's the SEC, and this year I don't know that I actually remember a year where there were as many talented freshmen as I've seen. Florida, the Curlin kid, the kid over at Georgia. Although Derek pointed out he's a redshirt freshman, but he's still a freshman. I mean, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So while South Carolina is expected to have, I would say, a pretty potent offense next year, and you mentioned 3 potential starters on the mound already, and I would agree those are probably the guys as it stands today, unless the portal changes that. This league is not going to get easier, so it's still going to be every weekend. It's still going to be a boxing match as you start out and move through, and you're going to still probably lose some games next year. Although people want to look ahead and think maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a talented base, but there's certainly some spots that need to be upgraded to take that next step and be more competitive and maybe the from a depth standpoint. And there's whether it's through the recruiting and the transfer portal or other guys getting better, like some spots have to be improved. And South Carolina can be better in left field, and maybe that's Dylan Brewer getting just getting better. South Carolina's got to be better in center field, and maybe that's Evan Stone or Will Tippett getting better. I think Tippett will be on the infield for whatever it's worth. So maybe it's Evan Stone getting better. You know this like I do. Scott Wingo was sat down after his sophomore year by Ray Tanner in his exit meeting and said, we got a guy coming in to replace you. Like you might be able to be a defensive substitute, but this Adrian Morales guy we're getting out of JUCO, and he's going to be our starting second baseman next year. And, Scott took that as a challenge and obviously did what he did. He got much better offensively. His glove is what kept him in the lineup the first 2 years, and they had to find another spot. For Morales, and he ended up being a pretty darn good third baseman. So there's got to be some upgrades in places. And, maybe Evan Stone takes that same challenge with Austin Brenling. Austin Brenling is going to be starting somewhere on this team next year, whether it's center field or left field or wherever. He's too good offensively and defensively. South Carolina needs to upgrade at leadoff. He's a great leadoff hitter. But maybe Evan Stone or Dylan Brewer, takes it to heart that Brenling's coming in and going to be starting somewhere and steps up their game. So, there's spots that have to improve. South Carolina's got to Cole Messina needs help behind the plate. They've got to be better at backup catcher. There's more meat on the bone at different spots, but there's certainly ways to upgrade.
Yeah, I agree. Cole's got to have somebody. So Brewer's a guy I keep forgetting about. Brewer is going to return, right?
I would say most likely.
He's not going to the draft.
Yeah, I highly doubt he gets drafted. I mean, he could be like a Colin Burgess kind of guy who gets offered a free agent deal and decides to go ahead and give professional baseball a shot. He's 4 years out of high school. He's probably got his degree or really close to it. So I'm not going to put his name in pen for being on next year's team. But as I start doing season preview stuff for 2024, he's certainly going to be in there.
Of the draft eligible guys, not the guys who are out of time, like I think we figured out the last couple of weeks, missing Will McGillis as long as they did was just a heartbreaker for this team. I mean, he's freaking good, dude. And he couldn't play, and that sucks. But we know he won't return. Of the draft eligible guys, Wimmer, Hicks, Hall, Sanders, all the guys that you would expect to sign, John, we expect to sign. Like we don't expect to see them.
Yeah. Gavin Casas is a guy who could get offered enough money to sign. He's probably the guy who's most fringy in terms of come back or sign. I do think that he is going to end up being back here. I don't think he's going to get quite enough to leave the program. I think he'll be back next year, but he's somebody to keep an eye on. But the frontline pitchers you named and Braylon Wimmer, those are all guys who I expect to go ahead and sign and begin a professional career.
Anybody else moving on from the program that we're not aware of that you? Oh, I saw you had a report on Denny. Maybe Denny.
Yeah, hitters had end of year meetings yesterday. Pitchers are going today. Caleb Denny has let the coaching staff know that his plan is to go ahead and retire from baseball, so to speak, and just move on and start life. Does that mean he won't enter the transfer portal and see what's out there? I don't think it means that. You may see his name pop up in the transfer portal to see what comes up, but his plan right now is to get out into the working world and start that life. So we'll see how that develops. But Caleb Denny is another hitter in addition to Braswell who won't be back. And then as guys are recruited from the transfer portal, there may be a couple of guys on the roster who say, you know what, they're recruiting past me. And maybe I need to look for a different spot. And, that could certainly happen. But in terms of anything imminent, that's what we got right now.
All right, I'm going to ask you something. I read your answer on Big Spur, but our audience is not all on there. And I want to ask this a certain way. Because Kevin asked it. Can you squash the Cam Cantarella rumors? Not asking you to comment on it. Just can you squash it? And it doesn't have to be a yes or no answer.
I can't squash him right now. Like, I don't know with 100% certainty that he's going back to Clemson. But I don't know with 100% certainty he's going into the portal. Like, I've heard some of the rumor and gossip too. Now it would be a surprise to me if he does go into the portal. Like, when you're a freshman All-American and All-ACC player, and you're obviously kind of becoming the face of the program next year with Cooper Ingle and Caden Grice leaving and a couple of those other guys who are on their way out the door. Like, you're the new face of Clemson baseball. Are you ready to give that up and see what's out there? I'm skeptical, but there's been a little bit of gossip about that being the case, and we'll see if that ends up being true. There's been a lot of smoke about it, and maybe there's something to it, but also at the same time we have to remember, like, there's often talk about guys going into the portal who end up not doing so because whatever reason that they have for wanting to go into the portal is situated in the off season after the season's over. Maybe he gets and I don't know why there's rumors out there about him, but maybe he gets a big NIL deal from somewhere up in Clemson that keeps him around, or maybe somebody's rubbed him the wrong way. Who knows? Usually, a lot of times, especially with great players like Cantarella, they find a way to smooth things out and get those guys back. So I would be surprised if he enters, but I can't sit here and squash it as we sit here right now.
All right, quickly here, John, final one before we let you run. One of the things over the last few years, I think, that has been frustrating to fans. I know it's been frustrating to me as a baseball guy, just understanding baseball in this state and the players in it. For the longest time, South Carolina scooped up anybody and everybody that they wanted. And, over the last few years, not as much. If you took the top 10 players in 22, 3, and 4, a lot of them were leaving the state and doing other things for big schools. But it does seem like that has changed, and it should change. I'm not sure why a lot of those kids would want to leave, but it looks like that has kind of shifted back into South Carolina's favor, where they're now kind of beginning to lock down the Palmetto State once again. Can you give us any background on that? I know a lot of this isn't going to be immediate help for Gamecock baseball, but just the overall picture of the future of the program.
Yeah, they're doing a better job in state than what they've done, and I would say things started to slip maybe a little bit towards the end of the Chad Holbrook era. in terms of in-state recruiting, but it mainly came about when you brought in an entire coaching staff from out of state without great relationships in the state. And that's part of it. And that's something Ray Tanner had to know that he was getting himself into when he hired a coach who brought in a staff with really no ties to South Carolina. Now Stuart Lake helped that a little bit, but there was only so much he could do in his role. But they just didn't forge the relationships in state, like they should have initially. It became more difficult, and there's a lot of people out there in this state who trust Monty Lee, and Monty Lee was right up the road. And some guys went to Clemson. There were some programs in this region like Mississippi State who were becoming really, really good and were kind of the hot thing in college baseball for a while. And they had a recruiter in Scott Foxhall who was very familiar with this state and had a ton of contacts here and were able to get in on guys and build relationships. And they have a great financial package in Mississippi that they can offer guys from the state of South Carolina. So guys were able to go there for free or pretty darn close to it. And add that into being one of the best programs in college baseball at that time, that had an effect. So, there were some different things that led to that, but, South Carolina's staff is built some better relationships in the state now. Monty Lee is obviously on staff now and has all those relationships and ties. And, I think it's turning in the right direction.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree, John. I mean, when you look around and it's starting to feel like it once was. There was guys that were, you mentioned Mississippi State, but I mean, Toman's boy was going to LSU till he signed. Louisville, Virginia, NC State, East Carolina. Got to keep those kids home, the ones that can play for you, and they're certainly doing that. Well, we'll leave you with a compliment. Nobody covers the Gamecocks better than you do, and we know that now that the season is over, it's not like you get a break. You got summer ball, and you got all kinds of stuff to get to. And I know that last week you took a couple of trips to go watch some former Gamecocks play some baseball, and I sure hope that was fun. But as far as in the 60-plus games you covered in season, John, it really is such a treat to week in and week out be able to read what you have to write, get your perspective on things, and you do it the honest, good way. And it is surely appreciated. I think I speak for everybody when I say that. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun for me to cover this season. I enjoy covering teams that win more than teams that lose. And
yeah,
this was a. If any sports writer tells you otherwise, they're lying.
Oh yeah.
So it was certainly a fun season, and I wrote it this morning. I think most people feel the same way. Like, this felt much more like Carolina baseball this year than what it's felt like in a while. So it was a treat to be out there, at the ballpark for 63 days. I think I missed a couple here and there, but a lot of those days, and I enjoyed the season for sure. So, but I appreciate you guys having me on every Monday to talk about it. So it's always good to cut up with you three.
Well, we don't have to, we don't have to cancel your appearances, John. We're not breaking up with you. I mean, we
yeah. Basketball.
It's really
we'll be back.
Of course, now that this season is up, it's time to renegotiate my contract. So we'll see if y'all can meet my wage demands.
Oh, me too. Now that I'm thinking about it, you know what? I'll get with you later, and let's come up with something to really screw the pooch on this deal. Yeah, I'm with you.
There we go. That's what I'm talking
$10,000.
about.
That's what I'm talking about. The bonus. Postseason
I
bonus.
need about 10 of those right there, and then we'll be good.
Yeah,
I'll drop them in your inbox here, John.
Hey, if you get through 4 months of Fired Kingston talk, we'll give you $10,000. That's what JC said, and here he is. He's standing.
Probably
tall.
worth it, though,
There
right?
Yeah,
That's
no
right.
doubt.
Man, really do appreciate it, brother. Have a wonderful week.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Take care.